Hi everyone, it's Emily, and today I wanted to share how to make 3 fall decoration ideas that are easy to make. And for this first DIY, I wanted to show how to make a scarecrow. So I started out by painting a canvas the color I wanted the scarecrow to be, but you can paint it a different color if you would like. Next, I painted the nose orange and painted the eyes. I also used a paint marker to make the mouth, and I added dashes on the mouth and the nose to make it look like they were sewn on. And I also added details to the eyes. Now when I was done with the painting, I wanted to make a hat, so I cut a piece of burlap that was wide enough to be glued on the back of the canvas and long enough to be folded and tied later. Next, I folded the burlap and glued it down with hot glue. Then I put glue on the edge of the canvas and placed a folded part of the burlap in the glue. Once it was dry, I flipped the canvas over and glued the burlap on the back. Then I took a piece of twine and tied it into a bow around the burlap. The last thing I did was that I trimmed the burlap to make it shorter and glued a sunflower on the hat and glued the twine in place so it won't come off. That's how I made this cute scarecrow idea, and you can either hang it up or you can let it sit against something. Now for this next DIY, I'm going to make a faux pie. So I started off by gluing pillow stuffing into a pie pan. Next, I turned it over and traced it onto a piece of fabric that was similar to the color of pie crust so I would know how much I needed. And I cut around the circle with a little bit more fabric left on the sides. Then I put a small amount of hot glue on the edge of the pie pan so I could start attaching the fabric to it. And then I repeated the same steps in sections until I was done. Once I was done, I flipped it over and trimmed off the excess fabric. Now to make the edge of the pie crust, I measured out 1-inch strips of fabric and cut them out. I needed about 5 of these, but for yours, this would depend on the size of the pie that you're making. After I was done cutting out what I needed, I put a dot of glue on the edge of the pie and placed the end of one strip in the glue. Next, I added a dot of glue a little bit over from the edge of the strip and folded the strip and placed it in the glue. Then I added glue underneath and placed the fabric back down so the fold will stay where I wanted it to be. All I had to do now was repeat the same steps along the edge of the pie. And when I reached the end of a strip, I glued the edge of a new strip as close as I could to the end of the previous strip. And then I continued the same steps until I was done. When I was almost done with the edge, I had to trim a little bit off and then I glued it in place. Now to give the pie some more details, I cut out 5 teardrop shapes out of brown fabric and glued them where I wanted them to be on the top of the pie. Next, I wrote the word apple with a paint marker on a piece of white fabric and trimmed it down to size. You can write whatever flavor of pie you want on the fabric, and you can use something like stamps or a paintbrush to make the words instead. The last couple of things I did was that I glued the white fabric down with a bow made out of fabric over it, and I also added a button on the middle of the bow. That's how I made this faux pie, and you can use this idea to decorate a tray or even a wall. For this last DIY, I'll be showing you how to make acorns. And to start out, I glued an Easter egg shut with hot glue. Next, I made a spiral with some twine and hot glued it on the smallest end of the egg. Then I added more glue and wrapped more twine around the egg until I reached where it would open. And I also used Mod Podge because it was less messy. Once I reached the opening of the egg, I used hot glue on the last couple of rows so it would dry faster. And I cut the twine where I wanted the twine to stop. Then to cover the other side of the egg, I repeated the same steps, but I used brown yarn instead. Now to finish the acorn, I cut a tiny piece of yarn and glued it on the top of the brown yarn for the stem of the acorn. Then I made 2 other acorns, and I also filled a basket with raffia, and ran a piece of twine through the back of a bow that I made and tied it around the basket. That's how I made these acorns, and I love how easy they were to make. That's how I made these fall decoration ideas. In the comments down below, let me know what you think about these DIYs, and if you like this video, subscribe for more DIYs. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!